name is Vinitha. I'm an author. I have written more than 100 stories for children, but 25 stories of mine are available in bookstores. I started my career as a journalist, and from journalism, I was writing and I was also editing. From journalism and television and the internet, I moved into book publishing. And so I've been a publisher and an author, and it really helps me to understand two sides of the story. It helps me to understand what it is authors come into publishing houses for, and what we think we are doing when we do write a book. And I also see it from a standpoint of a publisher, because I know now what it means to be a publisher, what are the logistics and the demands of a publishing house, why they say no to a book, or why they love something and they still can't take it on. So I see both sides of the of everything, of the whole space of being an author and a writer. And it's been a really, really incredible journey, because some of the stories that I've written and the most recent ones that have been acknowledged in the space of children's literature are long journeys of making it there. So some of my books are Sarah Learns to Fly and Ammu and the Sparrows, but I've written way before that. I've written for the last very, very long time. And I'm a girl from Mumbai, born and brought up in Mumbai. I have two kids. They're teenagers now. But I started writing when they were way before they were born, and I identify myself as someone who's invested in the space of children, someone who likes seeing things from the child's point of view, using stories as safe spaces, as sanctuaries, and also being someone who wants to help a child find a voice in storytelling, through storytelling, in storytelling. So that's all of that. Have I told you all about me? I've done many things. One, like I said, one is journalism. The other is I've been a columnist. I've written. I have explored the city of Mumbai with my feet and with my children, and I've written a column called Mumbai for Kids, and I've really enjoyed that journey. I'm also an editor. I'm also a content strategist. So, and I'm a mom. I'm a single mother, and I have learned so much from my children. A funny incident from my childhood. Okay, I have to tell you this. So, not many people know that one whole year in grade 1. I hid in a class. I wasn't there. So that's the funny story. It's interesting because from kindergarten to grade 1, it's like a big leap for a child. And I suddenly went into a bigger classroom where it was not as colorful. And because we studied in a convent school, there was moral science and catechism. And only for one period in the week, we would have to move to classes, different class. Otherwise, it would be the same class teacher, and the class teacher would teach all subjects, right, in grade 1. And there was this teacher. So my moral science teacher was this woman who had a gruff voice, and she used to wear a sleeveless sari blouse, and she had these big arms. And I was very scared of her. I have no idea why I was scared of her, just because her voice and her arms looked a particular way. She must have been the kindest person, and I think nothing to do with it. But I was scared. And I remember I sat under the bench a whole year when the class split into moral science and catechism. I didn't go with a moral science student. I sat in the catechism class under the chair, and the whole class protected me and never said, "Miss, someone's sitting down in the chair." So that's the funny anecdote from my childhood. If I had to give a book title for myself, it would be I Can't Stop Writing Now. I think I've been writing and writing, and I write all genres. Fiction, non-fiction, report writing, feature writing, magazine writing, television writing, and even in children's books, I have done a diverse range of writing. And I've written for young adults, I've written for middle school grade girls, I've written picture books for very young kids, I've written fiction, non-fiction. I haven't done horror, but I think I can do it if I'm put to it. So that would be my title. I can't stop writing now. When did I decide to become an author? I don't think it was a decision I made. Unfortunately, there is no romantic story. Like at this point in time, I decided I'm going to be an author. I think stories have been a part of my life from the time I was born. And I'll tell you the story a little later, but I have been a storyteller from a very young age because my mother was who she was. And she was a storyteller. She was a born storyteller. Her sister was a born storyteller. So when they told stories, I know words for it now. I know it's called sensorial journey, but it was a sensorial journey. And she would craft a story in a particular way. And you can't, even now when she calls us up, when she calls me up and she says, I'm like, please get to the point. And she said, no, I have to tell it in a particular way. And so she told stories in a particular way. And so I was born listening to that. So stories have been a part of my life. And in school, when the teachers went for a meeting once a month, and the entire staff room was engaged in it, all the children would be sent to assembly hall. And to get, so right, SSC school in the 1980s, it meant 60 children in a classroom. So that was close to 150 children in an assembly hall. Big assembly hall with all the echoes. To get children to speak, not speak, they would call me and I would be called to tell a story. And I would engage the 150 to 180 children for 1 hour because I made up stories right there. So I think my journey as an author has been as a storyteller, and that's been from very, very young age. And there was never a time that I had to be an author and I decided I'm going to do that. I come from a very middle-class South Indian background. And if I say middle-class South Indian background to anyone of my generation, the visual is very clear. It is, you never played sports. It was never okay to be a sports person. It was never okay to be a creative person. You had to join the sciences because that meant intelligence. So being a doctor was non-negotiable. Being an engineer was non-negotiable. And for me to not be any of these things took a lot of stumbling. But even through all of that, being an author was never at any point in time for a very long time, not the only thing I could be. It was a side hustle. I have worked all my life. All my adult life has been working life and full-time work, and I've always worked in different roles. But writing was something I did even before I turned an adult. And my first story was published, I think when I was 17 years old in junior college, and it just happened to get published and I got paid, and that was the first fragrance of the fact that you can do something fun and get paid, but never supposed to be a career option. So like I'm saying, full-time job, all my adult life, and writing even before that. But the words that I'm going to be an author and this is what I'm going to do for a living has never been a narrative until last, I would say, 5 years. So there was no decision to do that, but I was always writing all through that. The top 5 places in my travel list. I say Spain, and I say Spain because in school I remember someone wrote a very beautiful essay, and she at the end of it she said, and I felt pain because I was not in Spain. And just that line, ever since I've heard that line, I thought, oh my God, I want to be in Spain. So Spain is on my top list. Austria, I want to go to Austria because that's where The Sound of Music was, the setting of Sound of Music, and I loved the movie. I watched it like 100 times, and I've read the book and I love it even more. So in my head, I want to see Austria. I want to be Sri Lanka. I want to go to Sri Lanka because I believe that, I don't know, I've heard of candy and it just sounds so nice. The child part of me likes candy and I want to go to Sri Lanka for that reason. London because it's the land of all our literature and I want to see Shakespeare's place of work, and I want to see all of that. All of the colonial part of it is there. Italy, because me and my daughter love pizzas, and we want to at some point go to a place and just be in a small village in Italy and eat hand tossed, freshly baked pizza bread with base, and just live there. So yeah, that's my top 5 places I want to is in my visiting list. My favorite storyteller or book buddy from my childhood, I already answered that. It's my mother. My mother is one of the most incredible storytellers in the world. Honestly, uh, I just finished talking to students from college in South India, and I was telling them about this woman in the early 80s who had 4 children, and how I asked them to imagine that, and I've asked her to imagine this lean woman, fair, with long hair, with a big bindi, and I asked them to imagine her with 4 children, and I asked them to imagine the fact that the range of age for the children was, if the eldest was 10 years old, then the youngest was 2 years old, and the logistics of managing 4 children like that. And how she got us to all be quiet, and she could do her work of managing the day and providing for us food and doing all of that thing only because she told us stories. And that was my mother. I was talking to them. I didn't tell them my mother, but that was my mother. So she would tell us stories. Every day we'd wait for food time, because when she fed us and she'd feed us together in one plate, 4 of us, 10, 9, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old all together in one place, giving from the same plate food. And that's my mother. And she would tell us stories. And she would tell stories from every storybook available in the universe of stories. Grimm's Tales, Aesop, Panchatantra, Russian folk tales, Indian folk tales, Chinese folk tales, everything. And then when we were starved of it, we thirsted for stories. And when she told stories, we listened, because she told stories in a very sensorial way. And everything about my mother's life is a story. So when my mother said every incident was a story, I'm just marveling at the fact that she would go to buy vegetables and she'd come back and say, "You have no idea what happened." And we all gather around and say, "What happened?" And we were older. And even today, when she gives a call, she says, and then, and I'm like, "Mom, please come to the point." And she says, "No, I can't." And we all laugh, because my mom can't come to the point. Because my mom crafts stories the way stories have to be crafted. And she will start that I was there and it was really hot, and just like that, we are standing out in a vegetable market in the middle of a 12 o'clock noon sun, and feeling the sweat on her blouse sticking to her skin, and knowing that the vegetable vendor was wearing a white marketa, and he had a mustache and a mole there, and he probably has a thin mala made of Rudraksh beads. He'd know that, because that's how her story would be set. The setting and the fragrance and of that story was so clear, so sensorial. And then she would, when you lay a setting of a story, you also know, the audience also knows that things are going to change. And that's crafting a story, because you escalate the story. And we'd wait with bated breath to know what happened. And she'd take us to that point, and she'd also close the story with how it was transformational, how she ended it, how the adventure, and how she got back home. And without knowing, she put a process into place for us, for me. And I think, how marvelous is that, right? That's the lineage I come from. That is that strength, that is my gift, my mother, and the way she told stories, and what I picked from it. Today I have words to say beginning, middle, end. Today I have words to say setting, escalation, story curve, uh, transformation, conclusion. I have words for this. We didn't have words for it when we were growing up. It was just my mom and her story. And so my favorite storyteller from my childhood is my mother. And I think she had her mother. I don't know, but my mom still tells stories, and that's my favorite storyteller. It still is today. If I had to be a character from a book, what would I choose? My favorite storybook even now, is To Kill a Mockingbird, and I love Atticus Finch. I would love to be him. I still hope that in my children's life, I'm the Atticus Finch in their life. I hope that I'm the wise, kindly person that I hope a parent ought to be for children. Yeah, so that's my favorite person. And that's my favorite book too. My favorite book from my childhood? I don't have a favorite book from my childhood. I just devoured Enid Blyton. I think my generation of authors will all standard reply will be Enid Blyton. And I tell my children Enid Blyton, they're like, they don't want to read. I don't know if they've read as much as I read every single title of hers. I grew up in that space, in that vista, wanting to eat crumpets and tiny sandwiches. And seeing a cliff, or I've never seen a cliff, or a beach, or the sand, or anything. Those girls with blonde hair, that boy with a parrot on his shoulder, all of them were part of my life. They were my friends. So my favorite book is not one. It's actually an author, and Enlightened, and I just love. I still love reading. What she did to me was amazing. That I could do that for somebody is incredible. So today, two of my stories are part of CBSE curriculum. One of it is part of ICSE curriculum, and I'm just thinking somewhere in some school, someone's reading my story and probably enjoying it. And somebody has to answer questions, answer with reference to context, and I'm thinking that is so cool. I have, at no point in time when I was growing up, I thought that this would be me, and it is me now, and I love that. What inspires me to write? Good writing, honestly. Today, I read much less than what I really want to read. I used to read 3 books a day. Literally, I don't travel with a book even now, but I don't read as much. But when I read a good piece of writing, it makes me, something happens in my heart, it just wells up, and I'm just amazed that somebody has put into words so beautifully something that I felt that resonated with me, and that inspires me to write. A good poem just sets me off, or a good paragraph, I sit up and think, oh my God, I don't want it to end. So yeah, inspiring me to write is good writing, really. I feel an important part of a writing journey has to be a reading journey. Really, really has to be that. I have people who come into my space and say, we don't read anymore. And I want to tell them, please go back. Please read. Please read, because you need to know, if you're interested in writing, you also need to know what's being written all around the world. What are publishers publishing? Even just for the math of it, read. Read, of course, for the pleasure of writing and inspiring you to write. But read, even if you don't want to read for that reason. Read because you want to know what's going on in the space of writing, or in space of what is published worthy. So yeah, that's yeah. Other than writing, which is the activity I enjoy the most? Oh, I love walking and exploring places on my feet. Really I think I'm a planner. I love examining places and seeing what it does when I approach the place from this side or from that side. And other than that, I love drawing. I love art and drawing. How do I choose the titles for my book? Oh, they come to me as I'm writing. I sort of I know it sounds like that thing that happens for a reader also to also know, oh, this is why the title is the title. But for a writer, that journey happens while you're writing. At least for me, it is that way. I don't think of a title. Usually, I think of the story and the structure, and as I'm writing, somehow the title just says, hello, that's your title. And that's me. That's here I am. And yeah, that happens a lot. What characters that are brought to life in my book and what inspires them? I think the story inspires the character. I want to say something, and I need a container to tell that thing, and that's how a protagonist or the main character is born. And we all borrow from our lives, I think authors are very quiet people who are also very, very deeply observant. So you're observing all the time, and you're matching things with what you know of people. You're also making up your own things, narratives, and assuming that this person who wears black all the time, is this kind of person. Or, and the conversations, whether they match or they don't match, or the observations, whether they match or they don't match. All these things are part of the journey. But yes, but mainly it's about borrowing from life. And for me, it is wanting to tell a particular kind of story and finding a container, which is the protagonist, to tell that story the way I want to tell it. That's how it is. What do I want to convey to my audience with my writing? I want to convey hope. Stories have been my sanctuary. Stories have been my safe place, places I go to, places I escape to. And I want stories to be that space for every child. So I hope that at the end of it, even if we no longer want to tell the end or they all live happily ever after. We don't want to do these things now because we want to make it as resonating as possible. But at the end of it, I hope that stories I write are stories of hope. If books are your best friend, then a library is a place of utter joy. Really, a library is a place of joy. I'm in the middle of 4 or 5 projects. All of them I really like and I'm really happy doing. For instance, I'm doing 3 books in art. 2 of them are curriculum books. One of it is a story book for children. It's going to be probably a wordless book, so it's going to be the first I'm going to do. I'm also revisiting and rewriting a manuscript that I had written in 2010, so 12 years ago. And I'm looking at it and recontextualizing it. I think the book has a lot of scope. It's been a baby of mine that I've kept aside. So I'm working on that and I'm hoping to find a publisher for that. I think I will find a publisher for that. And I'm writing, and somewhere last year I thought I want to really explore another kind of writing. I want to now be brave enough to get into the space of writing for adults. I've written for children for so long. My first book for adults was a book I co-wrote with a teacher of mine. So I want to write this book alone now. That was scary and a journey, and this is going to be exhilarating and scary. So I'm writing something what I call a food memoir. I'm dipping into my memory of food and childhood. I'm also mapping the stories of women in my life and the stories of women in the kitchen through that. And that's a project I'm really, I think I have a very good feeling in my bones and I feel it's going to be a good book. So that is what I'm doing right now. I think my message for readers is read, keep reading, keep slipping into the land of stories and being whatever you want to be. Find your words through them. I know stories help us process a lot of things. I know stories are healing spaces, and only when you read can you escape into that and feel the joy and feel your heart swelling and feel ease, joy, and glory. And I think that's what I want. That's my only message to the readers. All my books are available for borrowing from the House of Books and Tales. And you can also order your own copy, and I hope you know that. Thank you so much for being and listening to me. I've had lots and lots of fun.